Chapter 18. The Last Days. So much to teach, so little time. The love I bore for my disciples lay like a tight band around my heart. Soon they would be left to carry on the religion I had founded, which only touched the garment of truth. They would soon have need for sure knowledge, the divine influx. They were so willing, but they could not even remotely conceive that a greater truth lay behind the primary truths I taught them. Behind all lay the eternal truth, larger and more beautiful than all the churchified religions upon the face of the earth, even mine, and the immutable law that all men to know God must know him directly and in their own person. Because even those who loved me could not conceive of the great truths of the initiate religion, I could only teach them little parts, by example. We went into the temple, and there I taught the crowds who had come to worship, and many worshipped me. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of that rushing week I spent trying to teach my own disciples how to face the coming storm and carry on my religion. The Jews came tempting to see if I would deny tribute to the Romans. I taught, that which belongs to society must be rendered unto society, and that which belongs to God must be rendered unto God. Those who believed that the grave was the eternal end of man came with a piteous question about whose wife a woman would be in heaven if she had been in turn the wife to 7 brothers, and I taught that in heaven there will be only those qualified as angels, for how could I say that in the eternal form of spirit man sought after the total good, not personal pleasure? When the disciples admired the building and stones of the temple, I suddenly saw into the distant future. The temple would not endure. I showed them then the foolishness of putting truth into a box. Truly, religion can never be put into edifices and buildings. No box of stone and glass could ever contain even my teachings, and certainly not eternal truth. I showed them the coming trials and tribulations, and forewarned them of the coming persecution. False priests and false people would try to stamp out my religion. I tried to bind them to my faith, to abide in my teachings and not return to Jewry. I tried to raise them from the belief that they were servants unto me to realize that they were equal to me, but this they could not then understand. I said to them, I have taught you these things that my joy may be yours and remain. This is my commandment, love one another as I have loved you. Remember, it is said that man has no love greater than this, he will lay down his life for his friend. You are of my belief because I have chosen you. You are not of the world, and therefore the people will hate you, for they will not understand you. To help in your travail, even when I am gone, I will send a comforter to you who is of the divine self, to serve you in the Spirit. I have many things to say and teach you, but the world could not understand them now. Yet when the truth is ready and the hearts of men prepared, the Spirit shall show the magnificence of the true religion. Then all things that I have done and known shall be done and known by every man, for my skills shall be shown to them. Yet even though the last Thursday was almost gone, and we sat at meat our own paschal lamb, I knew not what was truly to happen. For 3 days I had been trying to see clearly, and could see a little. The sacrifices at the temple were moved ahead an hour to make time for the Paschal feast. I sent 2 of my disciples into the city to find a certain man which I had foreseen carrying upon his head a pitcher of water. I know not why the vision came, or why I knew that man would provide a guest chamber in which to eat the Passover with my disciples. I did know that he had a large upper room, ready and furnished, and that it was there we should enjoy our Last Supper in fellowship. In my doubt and fear I tested the arrangements of the council. I said to them as we sat at table, "Surely one of you will soon betray me." I read sorrow and concern in the eyes of 11 of the disciples. In the eyes of one I saw the brighter look of love and duty. Judas Iscariot was the one. Yet in no physical way did he betray himself. Why had I not suspected? Judas, the Judean, the man from Kerioth. Surely he must have been the man of the brotherhood from the beginning. Surely he must have known. He had been with me 3 years, and in all those days, despite my teaching, he had never by any recognizable act, word, or thought betrayed his greater knowledge or his deeper love. How disciplined he must have been, and how at that moment I loved him for his selfless discipline, his service in my cause, his service to the brotherhood. Judas was surely a true initiate, wiser and more learned than the others, loving me doubly for the work we did together, but ever obedient to the greater good. Judas Iscariot was the truest of all my disciples, and surely his name should rank high in history. So little time, so much to do. We sat at our Last Supper, but I had not yet given to my religion a symbol of turning man into God. Sat at our Last Supper, but I had not yet given to my religion a symbol of turning man into God. I remembered the ancient ritual of the Caribi. They ate, drank, and inhaled the godhood. I wanted such a Eucharist of special meaning for my own remembrance. I took up the unleavened bread which had been broken once and set aside as the meal began, and broke it into small pieces. Take and eat. This is the body of the inner God. I took up the cup which was passed 3 times at the meal, and filled it and handed it to the disciples. Drink deep. I took up the cup which was passed 3 times at the meal, and filled it and handed it to the disciples. Drink deep. This is the blood of the inner God. There was no incense but the fragrance of roses, but I had built the ancient Caribi practice into my religion. In that room, only one understood that I built symbols of the mind to help reach the inner God. My religion was now established, with tenets, ritual, and procedure. I knew that I had woven into it as much of the eternal truth as the minds of men could then bear, and though that part was small, it would surely endure against all time. Man cannot touch the garment of knowledge or come to know truth even dimly, but that he is eventually clothed and cloaked in truth. Even with this small start, the vine of truth would sprout and grow, and someday the minds of men would be ready for the return of true religion. One thing yet I needed to teach, and that was humility. This I did by girding myself with a cloth and washing their feet, one after another. One thing yet I needed to teach, and that was humility. This I did by girding myself with a cloth and washing their feet, one after another. Now I had done all that time would allow. My job was not finished, but the hours were flown. Truly I say to you that I was ready, for so greatly did I long for my beloved that I would hurry myself to death or to her arms. I was ready to die, but not ready to succeed in my assignment. Something prompted me, and I raised my voice and said the code, "Let that which you are to do be done quickly." Something prompted me, and I raised my voice and said the code, "Let that which you are to do be done quickly." Even before the lamb was finished, even before the washing of hands after the feast, the brother from Kerioth left the chamber. I knew that the juggernaut was now to roll, and no man could stay its power. Even before the meal had ended, my inner doubt and terror assailed me so hard that I almost collapsed under the burden. We sang praises to God and left the guest chamber. I knew that the juggernaut was now to roll, and no man could stay its power. Even before the meal had ended, my inner doubt and terror assailed me so hard that I almost collapsed under the burden. We sang praises to God and left the guest chamber. Heavy were my thoughts and my steps, for I was not ready and time had run out. We went west beyond the brook Kitron, named for the blackness of its wet rocks, and turned left for 1,000 paces. At a special point we stopped to be certain that no one followed upon the roadway, for the Jews were aroused and could be vile. We then turned right into a narrow path and made our way to the garden of a grape vineyard, where there were vats, jars, and a small wine press. For this reason it was called by us Gethsemane. For this reason it was called by us Gethsemane. Fearing lest we be caught unwary, I left 8 at the gate of the garden and retired with Simon Peter, James, and John of Zebedee to a far corner of the garden which was beyond the vats. But even as we walked less than 30 paces, the bitter ache of my soul stole my strength, and I felt heavy, coarse, and mean. With this realization, my breath came in stark terror. I recognized the real cause of my doubt, fear, heaviness, an attitude of defeat. I knew now why my heart was craven, my cells weeping, and my soul aching. I was in the dreadful grip of the deep night of despair. I recognized the real cause of my doubt, fear, heaviness, an attitude of defeat. I knew now why my heart was craven, my cells weeping, and my soul aching. I was in the dreadful grip of the deep night of despair. It rode like a devil upon my spirit. I grabbed my friends in terror and collapsed. They clung to me in amazement, and I whispered dully, "My spirit is in the clutch of sorrow and death. Wait here and pray for me." I grabbed my friends in terror and collapsed. They clung to me in amazement, and I whispered dully, "My spirit is in the clutch of sorrow and death. Wait here and pray for me." Sobbing, I stumbled forward and fell upon the ground. Truly, I had betrayed the order. I had ignored my orders. I had destroyed the great cabal. Scacchus had prepared me, but I had ignored his words in the press of time and the teaching. For an hour, I alternately wept and prayed. For an hour, I tried in mounting desperation to externalize my spirit self. At last, in hopeless defeat, I cried to the starry night, "O God, to you all things are possible. Stay this cup of initiation if it be your will." In my aimlessness, I came back to find the 3 dozing, and my terror and loneliness leaped to anger. Out of self-pity, not righteousness, I upbraided them, asleep. "Can't you stay awake 1 hour? Wake up and pray. Do not yield to the temptation to sleep. Pray for me. Oh, my spirit is strong, but my flesh is weak." "Can't you stay awake 1 hour? Wake up and pray. Do not yield to the temptation to sleep. Pray for me. Oh, my spirit is strong, but my flesh is weak." Weeping to myself, I went again to attempt to enter into my exercises, my meditations, my prayers, and externalize my spirit self. But my cells were grapples and would not let my spirit go. I tried ever harder, and as the moments sped by, the terror mounted within my dark brain. In search of sympathy and companionship, I went again to my friends, but they were stupefied by the hour of waiting and dozed even as they manfully fought sleep. I turned away in sorrow and went again to pray and weep for self-pity. I turned away in sorrow and went again to pray and weep for self-pity. Suddenly I seemed to hear the rasping voice of Scacchus. "No one is a master unless he acts the part." "No one is a master unless he acts the part." No one is a master unless he acts the part. No one is a master unless he acts the part. No one is a master unless he acts the part. No one is a master unless he acts the part. No one is a master unless he acts the part. No one is a master unless he acts the part. No one is a master unless he acts the part. No one is a master unless he acts the part. No one is a master unless he acts the part. Truly, I had not acted the part of the master. I had turned to my followers for human comfort. How patiently they waited, and how great was my injustice to them. They did not know, not truly, that I faced an unknown and terrible ordeal. The days had been long, the work heavy, and they were rightfully exhausted in body and mind. They looked with heavy eyes and waited in patient love. I must be the master. I must not turn to them for solace, but must accept my fate. Again I prayed, asking that the cup of initiation be withheld yet a while. The answer to my prayer came in the faint shouts of voices already upon the path leading from the road to the garden. I tried desperately to externalize myself, but could not, and let go the fierce determination. For I remembered that the plan of the great cabal was so clever that even in failure of my greater goal I should partly succeed. Even as the voices drew closer, I felt better, for I had overcome somewhat the overwhelming sense of onrushing failure. Clearly now I could hear the voices of the party of guards from the Roman garrison Antonia, mixed with Jews from the constabulary of the temple. I could guess that they had been sent by the high priest to seek me out. The sands ran fast indeed, and the time was now come. I rose from the ground somewhat refreshed. In the closing of issues, in the removal of doubt comes comfort and courage. That which is known is never as bad as that which can be imagined. I went back to my beloved friends in that tranquility of spirit that comes with action. Sleep on, my beloved friends. Take your rest now. The hour is at hand when I shall be delivered into the hands of false priests. Sleep on, my beloved friends. Take your rest now. The hour is at hand when I shall be delivered into the hands of false priests. Even as I spoke, the voices grew so loud that all the disciples jumped up in concern, and some slipped out of the gate into the night. Before we could reach the gate, a great band came into the garden, carrying search lanterns upon high sticks. The Jewish constabulary were armed with staves. The Roman guards carried swords. They blocked our path and came swiftly around us. Judas Iscarioth came forward with that indefinable look of love which supports duty. He saluted me and then embraced me. Ah, that kiss! He made it upon all the secret points of love in the manner of the brotherhood. It was a kiss of love, a moment of uplifting joy. I felt the tears of his love upon his dark cheek and looked deep into his brown eyes. There I saw the agony of love overshadowed by the greater love of duty, and I knew the glory of selfless love. Yet I wanted physical proof and gently asked, "Do you deliver me up with this kiss?" He did not admit to me that he had done his assignment, but I knew. I took some heart in knowing that the Brotherhood was aware of all. They knew also that the final initiation was about to begin. For a second more he held me, then turned away and was gone, this dedicated, silent, loving soldier in the army of God. It gave me even more courage to know that I was not alone in the fight for the freedom of the minds, hearts, and souls of men. I was not alone, for I was but the leader of the charge. I quieted my angry and frightened disciples who would have defended me, and dispersed them lest they be harmed by the angry mob. I wanted them to live for my sake. It was an hour past midnight when I was taken, and delivered to the chief priests and the Sanhedrin, which had been called into session. My self was in agony as I was tried. Tried? Is it a trial when false witness comes after false witness under oath, each so false that he makes lies of the other's testimony? When at last the travesty was played until even the elders were smiling, the chief priest arose and came pompously and stood before me. He drew himself up to the greatest height possible with such a fat belly and short legs, and he cried, "I abjure you by the power of the living God. Say whether or not you are the Son of God." What a mockery he made of the powers of eternal truth when used by a true initiate. He could not have compelled a flea, and I almost laughed, as indeed the elders and scribes did behind their hands. But I answered, "You have a saying which goes, 'Hereafter you shall see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of eternal power and carried by the clouds of heaven.'" Was it a trial? Even at that he rent his tunic, for this was the custom of those who heard blasphemy, and he cried out in sanctimonious pity that I had even by these words been witness to my own blasphemy. On this the assembled priests and elders did solemnly vote that I was guilty of blasphemy, for which I should die. They then spat upon me, blinded me with a scarf, and struck me, laughingly demanding that I prophesy who would strike me next. In every evil there may be good. The very cruelty reminded me of the initiation upon the Britannin, and a faint hope began to grow in my heart. Had I not been prepared for this surpassing well? Yet I knew not what manner my death might take, and could only wait. Short were the hours, for I tried to make the sacred exercises burn into the black ashes of my self, even as they reviled me and cursed me. By early morn, 6 hours after I was taken, I was delivered to the governor of Judea, one Pontius Pilate. But the Jewish leaders would not enter the building of his hall of justice, for it was a Gentile building, and would, they thought, defile them and make them impure for the feast days ahead. Pontius Pilate ordered the court removed to a raised pavement in front of the steps upon which he held state functions. He looked down upon me from the dais of marble, gold, and red carpet and asked, "Do you claim to be the King of the Jews?" I looked up in surprise and almost smiled. For Pontius Pilate was Romulo of the Britannin, yet I knew that he would not help me, for he was one of the Brotherhood, part of the great cabal. For Pontius Pilate was Romulo of the Britannin, yet I knew that he would not help me, for he was one of the Brotherhood, part of the great cabal. "You brought the subject up," I evaded, and he almost smiled. But the priests and elders crowded about to accuse me of ridiculous things that needed no defense. Defense would have been useless anyway. Who could have defended himself against such varied, such false, such stupid charges? Pilate knew that I would offer no defense, but in brotherly jest he turned to me and said, "You do not answer? Look at the charges brought against you." I thanked him deep in my heart, for there was a mild surge against the deep night's grip upon my soul, and for a moment I dared hope. But this hope was not to live long. It was the custom of the times for the governor to release to the common people a prisoner. Even as we talked, the groups began to arrive from all over the city, and standing outside the palace, they cried aloud for the release of their annual prisoner. Pilate went upon the balcony and asked them, "Shall I release the King of the Jews to you?" But as one voice they thundered back, "Give us Barabbas! Give us Barabbas!" "What shall I do with the King of the Jews?" The words cut hope from me and plunged me deeper into the dreadful night of despair. Crucify him. Crucifixion was the lowest and meanest of all deaths used for the foulest criminals. Even Pilate was startled, and he called to them, "Why? What vile thing has he done?" But they thundered back, "Crucify, crucify, crucify." But they thundered back, "Crucify, crucify, crucify." In my dulled brain, I hoped for a day or two. I was not prepared for the fierce onslaught of events in time. I was scourged with the lash upon the steps of the palace. Exhausted with pain, I was delivered to the Praetorian Guard. There the soldiers mocked and reviled me and robed me in purple with a crown of rosebush thorns. Then they marched about me, chanting, "Hail the King of the Jews!" Then they marched about me, chanting, "Hail the King of the Jews!" Then in mock worship they knelt before me and spat into my face. It was great sport to them, though I have enjoyed other initiations somewhat more. Yet this sport was cut short and thrown into rough confusion by a centurion who yelled, "Crucify him now! That's an order!" It was not yet 12 hours since I spoke the code words. Time moved too swiftly, events staggered me, punishments exhausted me, and my own stubborn, aching self defied my mind and my will. It was all too desperately swift. I was pushed out of the hall, and a cross was slammed down upon me. I was too exhausted to bear the burden and fell upon the stones of the street. As I lay gasping, the cells of my brain dark as night, I heard the banter of soldiers, and then the usually quiet voice of Nicodemo. He was shouting that he was Simon a Syrian and should not be commandeered by the Roman guard. He was forced to lift up my cross, and as we moved through the streets, he whispered to me, "I told you once I would someday bear your cross for you." Oh, how I loved him then. Oh, how I loved my brothers then. How the pain of failing them shot through me, through every cell, through every pore of my skin like 1,000 arrows. My brother carried my cross and supported my weak steps up the steep slopes of Golgotha. Yet when he was forced away by the Roman guards, the grip of the deep night upon me returned with terrible force. Truly I say to you, let no man believe the lash, the thorns, or the nails caused me pain. I knew no pain from these. The only pain I knew was the unendurable agony of my deep night of despair. It made a millstone. Of each cell gave the awful power to, each cell to rebel and riot against reason and tear itself from its fellows in searing blackness. I did not feel the physical nails of the cross, but I suffered 1,000 deaths of defeat by the false cells of my own body. The nail driving through my right hand, in keeping with the custom of impaling the right hand first, struck a small glow in the utter blackness of my heart. The nail driving through my left hand struck a small glow in my mind. I was then raised aloft. The nail driving through my feet upon the footstop struck a small glow in my blood. I could hear the sounds of weeping but could not see, for my eyes were dark with the millstones of death. I do not know what happened during that first hour, but it seemed that 2 others were crucified near me, and 1 spoke in my behalf. Later I came to know that a sign was put up over me saying, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." Later I came to know that a sign was put up over me saying, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." Many who were curious stopped upon the Roman road which ran nearby, and those who could read said the words aloud to their companions. Many stood upon the top of the knoll to rail and laugh. Later came the triumphant Jews, the false priests and the scribes. They mocked me and challenged me to take myself down from the cross, or heal myself as I had healed others. Some of my followers came to cry aloud and beseech me to descend from the cross, that they might believe in me and accept my teachings. I tried with all my strength to externalize, but the hold of my black cells was greater than the iron nails. I tried with all my strength to externalize, but the hold of my black cells was greater than the iron nails. Yet none of this do I recall perfectly, but as if I had seen it through reflections in a muddied pond. Much later I seemed to have rested, to have recovered from the exhaustion of the lash, and my mind began to work slowly, as a cold worm works in frozen earth. All in the 3rd hour I began to try to recall how I had really come to this end. Why had I not done even more than anyone else? I loved my family well, but had I not given them up willingly for the greater world? I loved each of my masters, but had I not given them up willingly to advance on the path? I loved each of my disciples, but had I not given them up that I might serve the brotherhood? I loved each of my disciples, but had I not given them up that I might serve the brotherhood? I loved life, but had I not given it up for the good of all as the lamb of sacrifice to atone for the sins of the world? Had I not given up all? Suddenly my reason thundered, no, I was not here to atone for the sins of the world. I was here to fulfill my initiate destiny. If I became a symbol of atonement for sins, I forged a link in the chain upon the captive minds of all who believed. No, no, no. I had not given up all. Slowly, thoughts began to writhe in my dark brain like serpents in black ice, creeping lowly, one by one. No, I had not given up all. Had I ever given up my secret pride in my ability to learn swiftly? No. In my initiate oath, I had solemnly promised to give up pride in all skills, for they came not of man but of God. With a tortured sigh, I gave up that lingering, subtle emotion. The glow grew in my brain to a smothered flame on soggy wood, but with promise. Had I given up my pure hatred for the stupidity of the Jews? No, no, no. I had not given up all. Slowly, thoughts began to writhe in my dark brain like serpents in black ice, creeping lowly, one by one. No, I had not given up all. Had I ever given up my secret pride in my ability to learn swiftly? No. In my initiate oath, I had solemnly promised to give up pride in all skills, for they came not of man but of God. With a tortured sigh, I gave up that lingering, subtle emotion. The glow grew in my brain to a smothered flame on soggy wood, but with promise. Had I given up my pure hatred for the stupidity of the Jews? True, I had learned not to hate them, but still I held on to the rancor against their endless stupidity as a drowning man clutches even a stone. With a twist of will, I let go that stone. The glow in my heart licked at the black cells there. Had I given up my pure hope to achieve for the brotherhood? No. For did I not now in this instant strive for the high praise? Was it not more for the praise of man than the service of God I sought truly in the secret recesses of my heart? Again I breathed away the insidious and pleasing serpent from my flesh, and my mind began to burn away its blackness with a slow and churlish flame. Had I given up my resentment toward those who tortured me, those who even now taunted me? No, even toward the chief priests, scribes, and their cohorts who came to taunt me in my failure, I held a resentment. In my initiate oath, I had promised to forgive all things, even unto 7 times. First heard the sound of my voice and the words, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." The flame in my heart became fitful and rebellious, but growing. Had I given up my love of pity for failure? No, for I still mentally justified my failure because of the adverse events, the crushing avalanche of time. But why, if I was a master, had I not clearly foreseen this? Why had I not been prepared? Had not Skakos warned me? Had not Skakos warned me? Had not the signs been clear? Had not the deep night even announced itself at Capernaum, while yet I had time to see and to escape? No, it was not the fault of an avalanche of time. Had I not sworn in my initiate oath that I would not indulge in the luxury of self-pity? With a mighty twist of my will, I set my mind aright, and the flame in my blood grew yet more. Had I given up my self-will to become a master? Was not my purpose to master myself, that I might be the master of all men? In my initiate oath, I had promised never under any circumstance to control the mind of man. With a great sigh, I gave up even my desire to become the master of men. A flame licked cherry red in the black cells of my brain. Had I given up my desire to bring a new and different religion to all mankind? No. In my initiate oath, had I not promised never under any conditions to undermine the faith or mindset of any man in his own beliefs until he was ready to give up the old and accept the better? Was the world ready for the new and better religion? No. For man could never be free until the sciences of Egypt's Osiris were married with the splendor and lowliness of China's Tao. Until the philosophy of Aristotle was wedded to the beliefs and doctrines of Plato. For man could never be free until the sciences of Egypt's Osiris were married with the splendor and lowliness of China's Tao, until the philosophy of Aristotle was wedded to the beliefs and doctrines of Plato. With a great effort I gave up my long-cherished dream, and I placed the future of man in the hands of God. For man would, in his time, throw off the yoke of the false beliefs, unloose the chains of slavery upon his mind and being, and rise up to knowingly become as God upon earth. I could but make known the goal, I could only fight the good fight, and I could not even point the path. With this realization, a slender flame leaped in the cells of my blood and ran a needle of warmth into every tissue. Had I given up the delight of dependence upon my masters? No. Had they not all told me that they taught me only that I in my turn might teach beyond their knowledge? In my initiate oath had I not promised to build upon the skills of those who went before, until I was at last skilled and worthy to walk as God upon earth? Had I done so truly? Had I reached beyond my masters? With a twist of will I gave up my dependence upon all men and stood alone under the banner of heaven. Truly, had I given up all men, had I given up my father, had I given up my beloved Mariku, had I given up my own self? No. Yet had I not promised in my initiate oath to forsake all others and cling only unto God? No. Yet had I not promised in my initiate oath to forsake all others and cling only unto God? Had I given up my beloved Father? No. Yet I had promised in my initiate oath that I would forgo all family, knowing eternal beauty as my sister, the world as my brother, creative energy as my mother, and the universe as my father. Yet I had promised in my initiate oath that I would forgo all family, knowing eternal beauty as my sister, the world as my brother, creative energy as my mother, and the universe as my father. My brothers, my sister, even my mother, in truth, I had given up years ago. But not my father. I saw that he was not my father. He was the universal Father. Suddenly, I knew that the 3 modes of virgin birth were only one. My mother had been right all her days, for I was the son of the eternal God. What mattereth that my Father qualified the energy for the use of man? I was, and would ever be, the direct Son of God. Even as I thought upon this, the flames in my heart, brain and blood began to leap, to glimmer, to glow. There came through my body a stinging warmth, and I began to feel. I could feel the blessed nails in my hands and feet. I could feel the crying ache of the muscles in my legs, the thirst of my lungs for air, the cords binding my legs and arms, the tears upon my cheeks. Oh, how lovely to feel. I could feel the great love I now had for my sweet mother. I opened my eyes against the millstones of death and looked for her. I knew she would be near. My beautiful mother, my paternal Aunt Mary, who was wife to Cleophas, and Mary Magdalena stood near the cross. 2 were weeping, but my mother looked proudly upon me with the joy she would have looked upon a conquering king. How in the years could I have been confused with her love? Why did I not see that she loved me all the while, not the potential me, but the real me, which was there even then because she willed it and knew it? Had not her love been the strongest of all and borne her up to make her great beyond women? What strength was required to believe that she bore the Son of God, yet live with him as nearly human? What goddess could have done more? What mother on earth could have done half as much? I did not pity her now, not for her suffering, not for her down-thrust hopes, not for her years of efforts, no. I think I envied her then, for had not hers been the better part? Had she not known and experienced the blessings of divinity even before they were given to her? Was not her faith and her love an example to all men for all time? I smiled down upon her with the old boyish joy, and her smile came back with no sign but pride and love. Love. Here was beauty undiminished. Here was courage undaunted. Here was knowing which made me God. Hers was the gay smile I loved so well, firm and sweet, fresh as dawn. all the years I had not loved her enough. In those years when I had given her up, she never had given me up, but was constant in her knowledge and her delight. Hers was the truest courage, hers was the larger blessing, let hers be the sweetest rest. John of Zebedee stood near her, looking up at me with that love he ever bore me. Mother, look and behold your son. My beautiful mother took his hand, for he was till now the son of her sister Salome. John, look and behold your mother. His arms stole about her shoulders, and they stood as mother and son, looking upon me with hearts undaunted. Thus it was with love for both that I gave up my beloved father and my beautiful mother. They served me devotedly, each in his own way. Thus did I give them up to time and to the world. In a flash of insight I saw them placed in the future. My mother was the symbol of kindly motherhood, the idol of men, the example for women. Yet in a far time I saw my father rise in the esteem of man, and with it the rise of eternal truth. In those far-off, hallowed days, he was the idol of all. Men who sought truth, the symbol of the initiate. I was not disappointed that my mother would be raised quickly, and that my father, Joseph of Nazareth, the master of ages, would be forgotten even in my own religion, until initiate truth came at last fully to all men, and science and love met and wedded. Had I given up my beloved? No. Yet even as I bethought myself of my darling, the desire for her was like the pull of a herd of stampeding elephants. My heart raced with the delight I knew in her. Could I ever give her up? Was she not more than honor, more than fame, more than family, more than life, more than godhood? Was she not all beauty, all graciousness, all... Suddenly, the raucous voice of Scacchus cut into my memory, and I was reminded that he had said that love might cause me to die. He had given up all but love for the youth of Athens, yet he had gone through death. Even as I thought upon this, my beloved seemed to run from my mind, my heart, my blood, and I cried aloud, my God, why have you forsaken me? I do not even now believe I could otherwise have let her go, but with a bitter sigh I let go even my beloved. The flames seared through me with an intensity that burned me. The centers of my cells were aflame. The air around me was a living flame. The world was a radiant flame. The centers of my cells were aflame. The air around me was a living flame. The world was a radiant flame. The flame of my heart rose in a green sun and engulfed the world. The energy of the world avalanched into my brain. The glory and strength returned to me, and peace flooded through my blood. All of my emotions were refined in the furnace of these flames, and they were but ashes until even the ashes were absorbed in the flame. I thirst! The words came to my ears, and a moment later the touch of sour wine upon my lips startled me, and I lost the glorious flame. But I knew the willing soldier could not have understood that he did me no service at that moment to serve my physical needs. The flame was gone, and I was conscious of the cross. But there seemed to be no weight upon the nails, no real pain, only a blessed lethargy. And into this came two thoughts. No longer were they for myself, for I was now grown selfless. For all men, I wanted to leave a symbol that the secret places of religion, behind the veils and curtains, should no longer be considered forbidden to all men, nor sacred and holy, nor the place where one man could atone for the sins of mankind. I wanted to leave that great symbol that all men may know God directly, and that all men may rise by work and skill to become consciously God. I wanted to attain to the highest initiation, not for the pride of self, but that it might be a sign and symbol to all men that what I had done they also could do, and more also. I wanted to leave that great symbol that all men may know God directly, and that all men may rise by work and skill to become consciously God. I reached outward then with every effort of mind and will, and gathered from the world the essence of strength. As the mighty energy came into me, the earth around grew darker, and the sun ceased to shine through the black air. It seemed that I was sapping the strength and light from the air, and that the day became for the world a deep night of despair. It was dark at mid-afternoon, and there was a deadness in the air that made men afraid and birds to fall in mid-flight. But I continued to draw in the vital power until the very earth grew weak and began to tremble, to cry with pain and rend itself in its torture. When I was filled beyond holding with the strength and light, the very life of nature, I fixed my mind upon the giant curtain in the temple. That curtain which the Jews boasted it took 300 men to move, and I fixed my mind upon the practice of the Jews, but as the symbol of the practice of men everywhere, to forbid all men to enter save one, and to send him beyond that veil once a year to incense the Holy of Holies and thus atone for sin. I willed that this practice be forever removed, that all men might know God directly and be set free of the chains of sins that are invented even faster than they can be committed. Suddenly the power leaped from my head in a blinding flash of lightning more brilliant than the sun. It struck the curtain and ripped it and tore it and shoved it aside until it hung in 2 shreds against each side of the doorway. The inner sanctuary was open. The body of God could no longer be hidden from man, either as a symbol or as a fact. My first truly godlike wish had been granted. My first truly godlike wish had been granted. For a moment I rested, hearing the frightened cries of those who had come back to mock me, hearing the curses of the soldiers. Then slowly I began again to absorb the power of the universe and to qualify it to do the bidding of my mind and my will. I turned then to my beloved. In my mind and heart I fashioned an image. This lovely image was made by the marriage of the picture of my beloved, which was in all my cells, with a picture of myself as I had always wanted to be. Mariku became the Sita of the cavern, the symbol of motherhood throughout the universe. Mariku became the spirit mother of all creation. When my mental image was complete, I flung it across the world with all the force of my being. Suddenly I left the cross. I was in the arms of my beloved Mariku, in a heaven of welcome, of merging, mingling, flowing together into a wedding of wills, delights, breaths, cells, souls, bodies, and spirits. When my mental image was complete, I flung it across the world with all the force of my being. Suddenly I left the cross. I was in the arms of my beloved Mariku, in a heaven of welcome, of merging, mingling, flowing together into a wedding of wills, delights, breaths, cells, souls, bodies, and spirits. We were not separate, nor could ever be, but were a single unit larger than the world, more beautiful than the godhood, more wonderful than all life. A million voices spoke the word, the creative fiat, and every cell of my eternal bodies married those of my beloved. The word spoken became flesh, and we endowed it with our energies, our souls, our spirits. In the great mystery of creation, they intermingled until the compression of time and space exploded into a joy meant for all eternity. My beloved looked upon me with sweet laughter and great love. I looked upon her with pure and perfect understanding, for I knew at last that I had not spoken falsely when I said that marriages made in heaven no man could put asunder. For we were wedded for all eternity. Spirit. Suddenly all the temples of secret Egypt rang their great bells, and spirit messengers ran through the secret places of the world, bearing glad tidings of great joy. The great cabal had not failed, yet at that moment my beloved, laughing in her joy, said, "Remember, I want not the love of a shining spirit, but the solid flesh of my beloved man." My beloved looked upon me with sweet laughter and great love. I looked upon her with pure and perfect understanding, for I knew at last that I had not spoken falsely when I said that marriages made in heaven no man could put asunder. For we were wedded for all eternity. Yet at that moment my beloved, laughing in her joy, said, "Remember, I want not the love of a shining spirit, but the solid flesh of my beloved man." With those words, I was back upon the cross, and the world about was weeping, while I knew the ecstasy of success, the power of exceeding joy. Surely I could now transmute my flesh into spirit and move it from the cross. But though I tried with all my will, and now with a selfless will, I could not do so. Yet even as I worked, I saw my father and Skakos beckoning to me from beyond the distant cluster of my followers. In my joy, I shouted to them my song of triumph, "It is finished!" But they beckoned until I left the physical body, taking the animal soul and all other souls and bodies. I clothed myself, and we stood together looking back upon the three bodies upon the cross. "Why can I not transmute my flesh?" I asked. My father answered softly, "My son, do you really think you have passed the final test?" Had I not passed the final test? I pondered on what more I could do, but when I would have asked them, they strictly instructed me to be silent, for it would be many days before I could speak without exerting excessive energies. We mingled with the crowd and walked as men on earth. We saw the centurion break the legs of the two crucified beside me, that they might die quickly by suffocation. We saw the spear thrust into the side of my body because I was already considered dead. Soon Joseph of Arimathea came from the palace of Pontius Pilate with an order to the centurion to release my body for burial. Skakos and my father helped to ease the body from the cross. I was told to stay far away until they beckoned to me, then to hurry in and remove the nails from my hands and feet. This I did, removing the nail from the right hand first. When I was close to the body, I was pulled with a mighty force and almost succumbed to the demand of the cell self upon my externalized spirit. But I myself used the pry that loosed my hands from the bar and my feet from the upright. Let it be known that I did take myself from the cross, and let this apparently simple statement be heard by every initiate in the world. At sharp and stinging orders from Skakos, I moved away from the terrible pull of flesh and watched Nicodemo come with a clean linen winding sheet. He carried my head while my father carried my feet, and they hurried to the nearby crypt newly prepared in the burial cave of my uncle. I stood behind 5 weeping women and 6 of my disciples and watched as the myrrh and aloes was placed so that it would keep away the mice and borers, and my body was wrapped as if in swaddling clothes. Stood behind. At this moment I realized that I was the universal candidate for initiation into the highest mysteries. I was the symbol of all initiate learning. I was the eternal babe laid in the eternal manger. There was an invisible force that held all but those who were of the brotherhood away from the ritual. They only worked on my body. It was all done with accomplished skill and great dispatch, and in less than an hour I was left in the crypt, and the centurion caused the soldiers to seal the tomb. This was the manner in which it was done. The Jewish priests had persuaded Pilate that my body would be stolen so that it could then be claimed that I had risen from the dead. A large stone was moved to block the passageway to the cave, and 3 smaller rocks were set against this stone. They were then each sealed with seals of paper and wax. These would be broken if one of the stones was moved. When the centurion carefully affixed the seal, a high priest grated, "Now we'll see if this Son of God can raise himself in 3 days." Yet a moment later, a runner came with the breathless news that the veil of the sanctuary was torn asunder, and that any man might enter the sacred place, and all men could see clearly therein. The council of the world was assembled in the home of my uncle. I received the congratulations of those ascended masters, the everlasting ones. But Nicodemo came in quickly to tell that the chief priest had decided to have my body stolen and hidden away. If, on finding the body gone, my followers made it known and claimed I had risen from the dead, the body would then be thrown from the tower of the temple to prove for all time that no man could be part of God, and crush out my religion forever. The consternation and concern of the council was so great that I wondered greatly. Skakos said, "Your body should not be disturbed for 3 days, but you'll have to reinvest it." Thus it was that Nicodemus joined the party from the temple who went to steal my body. They found the tomb empty. In this manner I could not yet transmute my flesh, but I could re-enter and animate it. Yet this would leave the flesh body inside the sealed tomb with no way out. However, there was a narrow crypt near the mouth of the cave, and the body of a man would block the view into it. I was to reinvest my body and hide there. Nicodemo was to stand blocking sight of me, holding aloft a light until some, possibly all, had entered. I was then to come out and join into the group with him. When the priests found the sealed tomb empty, they fled so swiftly in the night that I strolled out of the tomb in the early morning and waited in the garden for my brothers to come. Scaccus and my father came and were examining the crypt when Mary Magdalene came weeping at first light. "Why look for the living in a grave?" Scaccus rasped at her. She stood in terror and indecision. I spoke her name and she recognized me. She would have embraced me, but I dared not yet yield to human touch and said, "Don't touch me yet. I have not fully succeeded, but go tell my people that I have proved that each may go to his radiant spirit, I to my God, any other to his God." I was swiftly carried by cart to the Essene Brotherhood at Bethany, and then urged to step forth from my body again. When I had done this, I was told that it would now be 3 days before the tissue again would be able to receive the spiritual bodies without grasping them and binding them. This is a truth known to every higher initiate, and is expressed in some religions as a belief in disembodied spirits which haunt the body for 3 days after death. 3 times more I showed myself, for my disciples needed to see and know that the inner Christ can be raised from the tomb of flesh. They needed courage for the ordeals ahead. I taught them about the externalization of the human soul and that it came forth from them upon the breath. Thus did they come to see the Holy Ghost. Yet another time I appeared to teach them to believe upon the radiant Christ and the resurrection from the dead, without being able to see physical proof of one who is risen. I taught them that all who believe that I am a risen Christ, and that he may be also, that same may rise to eternal life through my path. Yet again I appeared that I might teach them forgiveness. Also I manifested for them the loaf and the fish cooked over the fire of will, to be the eternal symbol of the ability of all men by effort to achieve the wedding of the body and the radiant spirit into eternal life. I let them know that even those who have thrice denied me, Simon, Peter had, were yet to come, as to my faith, tend my flock, feed my lambs, which are the spirits of all, men who hunger for truth. I taught them that each man was his own atonement for all sin, the fleshly portent of the everlasting God. More, evermore did I teach. Simon, Peter, was the symbol of the plodding, self-satisfied, orthodox, big, strong, and grasping. John of Zebedee was the symbol of true faith attained through mystic love, service, and unrelenting effort. He would eventually attain the higher degree, but in the beginning he would be outdone. I separated the two, showing that the greater must wait my return, and that the lesser would, after serving its time, be destroyed. This, however, I did not teach and never shall. That man must be bound together by strong organizations and central authority. Truly I say to you, no church can contain my teaching, for I taught that the earnest heart of each man was the center of his religion, the church of his soul, the structure of his worship. My religion cannot be contained in things of stone or wood or structure, nor taught by paid priests. My religion will come only freely and without tithe or tax, from heart to heart, from mind to mind, from soul to soul. Fanaticism of new faith was not of my choosing. It is not my will that the religion I began shall be entombed in a church. That which I most dislike was thrust upon the people for all time. When at last I had taught them all I could, I had not risen through the last of my own trials. What it was to be, I did not know, and I could not get any of the masters to talk to me about it. I could not leave my disciples, but return to teach them that sin was not of God, but of the mind of man, and they could create it or deny it by their attitude of mind. I taught them that all illness is the result of the belief in sin, and that he who has forgiven the world for its transgression finds no sin or illness in himself. I taught them to heal by the laying on of hands, and also that healing is the easiest of the mystical skills, and becomes the trap in which the feet of those who tread the mystic path are often snared. One serves one's, but still I did not know what I lacked in my own trials. So I taught them that service to one's fellow man is service to God fellow men, not because they are beautiful, deserving, or good, but because it is man's duty to his radiant self and to God. In my teaching I came to an end, but still I did not know what remained of my own development, and I began to pray. Suddenly, as I prayed before my beloved disciples on a hillock outside Bethany, I realized that Skakos was my final test. Skakos. Indeed, he had always been my greatest obstacle, even while he was my greatest help. His very indifference, his inscrutability, these indeed had been my final test. They had been as carefully planned as the handy tomb in the Garden of Crucifixion. He was to teach me that no rule contained total truth, no word could contain the truth. I found that I must now give up my teachings, at least in part. I had said there is no love greater than this, that a man will lay down his life for a friend. Yet men daily lay down their lives for duty only, and do so without thought of heroism. I, who thought I knew all love, went to the cross without knowing the greatest love. Truly there is a love greater than this, that a man will give his life for mankind, for his fellow man. There is a love greater than this, that a man will love his neighbor even more than his own self. Truly I say to you, there is a love greater than even this, that a man will love those who despitefully use him, or those who willfully wrong him. It is not always easy to love, even where there is understanding, especially spiteful understanding. But the initiate quickly rises above the things he understands. He rises to a higher truth. Truly, there is yet a greater love. From this love comes a commandment for this new age, a commandment that will bring harmony in the world and peace among nations. This commandment I do now give to you: love you well those whom you do not understand, even as you love your radiant self. This was my final test. I had loved all of my masters well, except Skakos only. He was my test, and his whole life was given to teaching me and testing me. From foul-smelling bear grease to raucous voice and veiled eyes of strange content, from apparent cowardice to insolence in the way he said boy, from calculated overbearingness in work to excessive confidence, all were part of my final initiation. Even as I prayed for understanding, it swept over me in an ocean's depth. Suddenly, I was surrounded by all of my masters, and they looked on me with eyes of shining love. Skaka stood and looked upon me, and slowly the veil over his eyes lifted, for I found love in my heart for this master who would not permit himself to be understood. I saw that in his heart there was a jade sun, and Skakos fell upon his knees and gave voice to praises to our Almighty God, saying, O God, Master of all Godhood, supreme and immutable, indwelling and perfect, let us be raised into your eternal bliss. Accept now this, the newest Master of the universe. Where Skakos then handed me the golden sword of the Druids. My masters returned to me the jewels of my masterships and the scepter of the Christs of Persia, and I was exceeding glad. Then suddenly we surrounded by a great light and the music of the spheres. Our bodies were raised, and I willed mine to be transmuted. I saw the perfected souls of my masters, and in each there shone a glorious jade sun. Shining for all eternity brighter than 1,000,000 earthly suns. As the glory grew around us, I willed myself and suddenly was upon the strand. There in the arbor was my beloved wife, and her eyes were raised and her arms outstretched in welcome. She awaited me with the new Son of God, the avatar of the new age, beneath her heart. I touched her and was happy. She touched me and said, "Oh, I'm so glad. My love is not for a shining god, but a lusty man." Then only did I truly know that I was God.